Hey everyone, it's Naomi Wolf of Daily Clout. We're so honored and thrilled. It's such a privilege we have from time to time to welcome Representative Melissa Blesek of New Hampshire. Welcome, Representative Blesek.
Hi, it's nice to be with you guys again.
It's a joy, and I've followed your journey now for a year and a half, and you're at the forefront of legislators in the state of New Hampshire, really a model to the rest of the country in innovating pro-liberty legislation and making it pass. It's such an achievement. So you've got some amazing news for us today. You've got a bunch of stuff that passed, right?
We got a lot of legislation passed this year. So yesterday was the deadline day for all bills to be acted on by both bodies. And we did really, really well this year. These are all bills that I worked on. These are bills that my organization, Rebuild New Hampshire, endorsed that have passed now both bodies. So we got 15 bills that are headed to the governor's desk. We have HB 275, that is state of emergency reform. We did reform our state of emergency laws last year. This was the further changes that we wanted, namely that after a set period of time, the governor has no ability to further a state of emergency on his own, and both chambers must agree to continue a state of emergency.
Can you pause right there? I know you've got a big slate to go through, but to me, that's one of the most important things you could say. Yes. You were the person who told me, and you're actually a hero in my new book, The Bodies of Others, but I was astonished. I remember when you told me that I think at that time 33 states were under emergency law, and my own state where I'm sitting right now, New York, is under emergency law. And this is super serious. And you're the first person who explained to me how to solve that. So tell me how this bill addresses the problem of these open-ended emergency powers that so many states are still laboring under.
Essentially, before COVID, every state had state of emergency laws that were essentially the same. It said that a governor could declare a state of emergency that gives the executive branch unlimited authority to create emergency orders for an unlimited amount of time. And that is not how a constitutional republic functions. A free society has separate branches of government with checks and balances of authority. And that is not how you're operating if you're living in a state of emergency still. And there are still to date many states under a COVID emergency, which is wild. I mean, I just found out, Arizona reopened really early and they're still in a state of emergency. So he may not be using the authority, but it exists. So last year we passed, I'm blanking kind of on some of the changes, but we passed a lot of changes last year in the budget trailer bill. That essentially said that, some of the things, it handed back financial control to the legislature over federal grants. It said that, the governor could only declare it for a certain period of time, after which the legislature must meet to vote to continue. However, my issue with that bill was that if the state of emergency was continuing, they have to vote to terminate. I needed it to be the other way around. It should take both chambers to say, yes, we want a state of emergency.
It's like safe sex. I'm sorry, I don't mean to. I think that it's like you need to hear an affirmative yes. It's not just like they're not saying anything, right?
Exactly. So there was that. There was gave the ability for the legislature to terminate a particular order, i.e. like line item veto power over the state of emergency itself. And all those changes were great. But this bill says that the state of emergency will terminate after the governor can redeclare a state of emergency 3 times, and there are 21-day segments. After that, the state of emergency terminates. It is done. Wow. The legislature must then vote to redeclare a state of emergency if they wish. So we got that, and that was
it's amazing.
That was huge. Yeah,
huge.
Yeah, we got that.
How did you get both parties to agree on that? Because the status, as I've been traveling around the country during the last year and a half, is that, and I'm embarrassed to say this as a lifelong Democrat, but Republican legislators at the state level were willing to end the states of emergency, and Democrats were resistant. And it was I hate to say it, but the Democratic governors who were absolutely the worst and are Kate Brown, Kathy Hochul, they have been latching onto that state of emergency like, something out of a horror film. So how did you get those sides to?
Democrats did not support this bill. This was we have a Republican trifecta. It's a narrow one, but we've done a lot with it. And Democrats did not support this bill. And actually, I couldn't get the Senate to agree to, the Republican controlled Senate to agree to that particular language last year. That's why it didn't happen last year. But essentially, this was as much political muscle as we could manage. We held the budget hostage until the very last minute. This bill passed this year so easily because as of the day before the budget vote, they did not have the votes in the House to pass it. Wow. And it was the day before that a deal was struck with the Senate, but at that point it was too late to change the language. Okay. Right. So a deal was struck that a bill, an early bill would be put in this year, passed without amendment through both chambers. And the governor actually wrote us a letter saying that he would agree to sign it. So that is the only reason why the budget passed last year, is because we were promised this bill. Gotcha. And that's what happened. And it all worked out.
I mean, kudos to you. I know you've been fighting for this for a year and a half, and your colleagues have too. And you're one of as far as I know, you're the first state to get to this finish line of solving the problem of emergency powers.
The only state that did it better, several have made some attempts and they've been good, not as good as this. The only state that did it better was Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania put them on their ballot to get, because their governor was going to veto all of them. And so they did a ballot initiative, or they did constitutional amendments. That's how it was. They did a constitutional amendment so that it would go to the ballot and the governor couldn't veto. My issue with I understand why they did it politically. It was their only path forward, and they got slightly better reforms than we did actually. But my issue with it is I don't want these things in my constitution and set in stone, because I don't think an emergency power should actually really exist to begin with. Our state constitution was written with emergency powers. Here was what happens in an emergency. The governor calls the legislature into special session to handle it.
Wow.
That's how the state
so reasonable.
Right. So I don't really want to put that in the constitution, but I want it in a bill that I can more easily change moving forward and ultimately maybe improve it more. Anyway, that was our big state of emergency stuff. That's all that we did with the state of emergency this year. The rest of our bills were really focused on medical freedom this year. Before
you go on to the next ones, because this is such a joyful moment, does that mean New Hampshire is out of a state of emergency?
Oh, we have been for over a year. That was also how the budget passed last year, as the state of emergency was ended. Yeah.
So you didn't just get rid of it a year ago. You've set in place legislation to keep it from coming back.
Correct.
And that's so critical. And I know we'll publish your bill. It'll be a template for all the rest of the states in the country. It's so important because all over the country, here in New York, we have the sense that the other shoe could drop at any time. Like, yes, the masks are off. Yes, the businesses are open, but they can hold this state of emergency over our heads. So you've solved that. So congratulations to you. So let's go on to the next one that you like.
Yes. So we have a pair of bills tackling the COVID treatment issue. I'm sure a lot of your community is aware of all of that. So HB 1466 said it's basically, call it the Don't Tase Me bill. It just basically says that the doctors and the pharmacists cannot have their licenses threatened for prescribing and filling off-label medications.
Fantastic.
And then to go with that, and this one's made a lot of headlines. People have seen this all around the country. 1022, making ivermectin available over the counter via a standing order. We passed that.
Oh my gosh.
Can I be honest? When we put that bill in, I thought it was the red herring to get the other bill passed.
Right.
I never thought it was actually going to really go the distance. I hoped it would, but I just was like, well, if we get the other one, that'll be great. But we pushed really hard on that and people really wanted it, and it happened. And the FLCCC doctors were such a great resource. Dr. Paul Merrick came up to testify. And at one point in the Senate, I thought I was going to lose it. And so I had Peter McCullough call, and I had Pierre Corey call, and I had all of them call the Senate Majority Leader and leave a message for him. And I think it pushed it over the edge. So yeah, no, that was great.
Unbelievable. And is that the first in the country? Over the counter?
So Tennessee passed one, but it has been signed into law, but theirs is subject to administrative rules. So they are still working out the dirty details with the bureaucrats, and we wrote ours so that that's not the case. It will never be subject to regulating by bureaucrats. When it gets signed into law, any doctor in New Hampshire can call up a pharmacy, make a standing order, and anyone can go into that pharmacy and buy ivermectin.
Honestly, this gives me chills. I mean, you know, in New York City, I know people who are like passing along black market information about, it's like speakeasy, like there's this pharmacy in Brooklyn that'll fill your prescription for ivermectin.
Yeah.
This is so much bigger than ivermectin. You're giving doctors the right to have a private relationship with their patients again, not mediated by the state or big pharma. It's huge. Keep going. This is so exciting.
So those the mask bill that we passed is HB 1131. It prohibits public school mask mandates. This was probably the most popular bill of the year. The parents were obviously very worked up about this, and they turned out in droves to get this bill passed. And we are very, very excited about that one.
No more masks in schools in New Hampshire.
No more masks in schools. And I can tell you that right now, there are still masked schools in New Hampshire. So we need that bill to get signed into law so that that will end. Yeah.
I remember going to New Hampshire to cover some of your landmark legislation and seeing these poor little, you know, these classes coming to see how the state house operates. These little tiny munchkins were masked. And now in New Hampshire, I mean, I can't even express how happy I am to hear this. Yeah. You've said not in our state, not to our children. And it sounds like parents had their voices heard in the state of New Hampshire.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, we have, well, this one's a great one. HB 1003, prohibiting healthcare providers from refusing to provide services or care based on patient vaccination status.
Thank God.
We've heard stories, I mean, not in New Hampshire, but we've heard stories around the country. This one actually passed bipartisan through both houses. And no one had a problem with this bill, which was great. But in other parts of the country, it's been a serious issue. People can't get transplants, all of that kind of stuff. So this will prevent that. In a similar vein, HB 1439 relative to healthcare facility visitation policies. Obviously, what we saw during COVID, people with COVID and without COVID were left alone in hospitals. They didn't have patient advocates with them. They were left to die alone. And this bill essentially says that, you know, patients have a right to have visitors. So, yeah.
So moving. I mean, this is so moving because it's not just New Hampshire, right? As you were saying, we hear stories across the country of people denied visitation, people dying alone, or I hear stories all the time of, you know, someone has cancer, they won't be seen if they're not vaccinated. Someone, you know, wants to have a baby, they won't be taken to the hospital if they're not vaccinated. And this is so humane and so common sense based. Go ahead, please.
Absolutely, absolutely. We have this is an interesting one. HB 1280, prohibiting a parent's refusal to vaccinate a child pursuant to an order to be used as a basis for terminating parental rights. So basically, if you don't, this happens in divorces a lot, or lately, I'll say, I won't say a lot, but lately it's been happening in divorce situations where one parent wants to vaccinate the child, the other one doesn't. The courts side with the parent that does want to vaccinate the child and then, you know, removes custody from. This bill is like, no, we're not doing that. So yeah, that's great.
So you're saying that the parent who wants to doesn't get an advantage in custody disputes.
Yes, that would be my understanding of this bill. Yes. I didn't even know the person was filing this, who filed it, and then they did. And I was like, oh, what a great idea. I hadn't even thought about that. And I have heard of issues like that.
Oh, I know so many couples, divorced couples, for whom this is a fear. The ones who don't want to vaccinate are terrified of even pressing the issue with the other parent because they're afraid of losing custody. Let me just pause you for just one moment. What's striking to me about this whole kind of mosaic of bills is how thoughtful and humane they are. So is there something you can say about how it is that your group of legislators was able to, you know, operate, I mean, in such a time of like dysfunctional, pathological sociopathy, you know, how were you guys able to really think compassionately about parents, about children, about people in hospital, about divorcing families? These are very sensitive bills.
So all of these bills are House bills. The Senate in New Hampshire is 24 people and the House is 400. We are very close to the people in the House. We are, I mean, usually the House is more close to the people, but we really are. I only represent 3,600 people. I don't have any staff. I have my personal cell phone number on the state website. I hear from people.
Right.
And I think that that's what makes the difference. We really are close to the people. We listen to the people. Unfortunately, sometimes our senators, because they need to run big fancy campaigns, they're more beholden to lobbyists. They do a lot of bills that are put in for lobbyists and not for people. I don't take any lobbyist money. So I put in bills for people.
Right. Gotcha. Wow. Yeah. What a change. What evidence of the good bills that can come about when people are really able to represent their constituents. Go ahead. Don't let me stop.
Okay, so more vaccine stuff. We have HB 1495 prohibiting the state from requiring businesses to require vaccine or documentation related to vaccination or immunity status. So I call this the New Hampshire will never be New York City bill.
Awesome.
We weren't doing it, but we do have some cities who had sort of, somewhat considered doing something like this. And so now we're saying no. There you go.
God, out of the question, no vaccine passports.
We're just not doing that. And we already had passed a bill last year. We call it the Medical Freedom and Immunizations Act. And it said that the state could never, the state and political subdivisions could never require a COVID-19 vaccine for any like public accommodation or anything like that. So we'd already passed that last year. And adding on to that, we had a carve out at the time for employees of medical facilities, and we reversed that this year. We have HB 1604 that was including state medical facilities in the statute providing medical freedom and immunization. So we reversed that this year. Which is great. We have a couple other vaccine ones. Let's see, we have HB 1099 prohibiting the Department of Health and Human Services from requiring vaccine passports. That's one. And then we had quite a few. Oh, I'm missing the main one. HB 1455 relative to state enforcement of federal vaccination mandates. This is a nullification bill. So when the Biden mandates first came out, I started calling people and saying, if you could nullify something, like how would you do that? And essentially how you get states' rights. I'm always saying, make states states again. And we need to take back our state sovereignty, our state power. And you don't enforce. I did a lot of research. The federal government does not have personnel to enforce these mandates. They simply do not. They will rely on the states to do that enforcement.
Right.
And we can say no. So 1455 says no. The state will never enforce a federal vaccine mandate, and we will never share any vaccine data collection with the federal government.
Honestly, this gives me chills, Representative Blesek. That's so smart. That solves the problem of federal overreach.
Yes,
at a
this
state
was
level.
The Speaker of the House's bill. He prime sponsored this bill after there was a rally that he was there, and the people. This was right after the mandates came out, and he was so moved by people and their stories that he put this bill in. So,
Representative Blesek, are you allowed to do that? I mean, can states say we just won't to the federal government?
Absolutely. I work with the 10th Amendment Center on this bill. So yeah, no, absolutely. We can't say that you can't have that mandate. We can say that we won't do your dirty work for you.
Wow. So really that is an option that every state has according to our system.
Yes. So we've done it with like a gun rights, and we also had a gun rights bill about this also, but it doesn't prohibit the federal government from stepping in and saying we're going to enforce, but it would take a lot of muscle for them to do that. I frankly don't think that they have. They're going to rely on the Department of Labor,
Right.
And certain agencies to do these things, and we can say no. So we did.
You're absolute. God, this is genius, Representative Blesek, because how have these horrible policies been implemented? It's through the states being enlisted to do the federal government's dirty work. It's through boards of health and, boards that like sanitation and police officers and so on, and people who can say no, it would seem. And this is a bit of an aside, but I, walked into a lunch counter in New York City where I was forbidden to sit down because I'm not vaccinated. I just did. And I told them, I'm just going to sit here. You can, let Governor Hochul know, you can let Mayor Adams know I'm here if they want to arrest me. And of course, no one arrested me. And it occurred to me that there is an absence of enforcement, and people don't realize that because they don't want to push it to that limit. They're scared, they're intimidated.
Right.
Understandably.
I read your article about that, and you are very brave, but I agree.
Not really, as it turns out.
Not really. Somebody told me a while ago, and it's so true. Bravery is like a muscle that has to be exercised, and it hurts to exercise it, but then it grows stronger, and it becomes less hard every time. So I wish more people unfortunately, I guess, have allowed that muscle to become very atrophied.
Well, what's so beautiful about watching you and your colleagues on this journey, and we're supposed to be nonpartisan, so I'm trying not to fangirl all over this, but it's beautiful just objectively for our democracy that you guys were kind of feeling out, like, what do we have in the middle of this lockdown, these restrictions, these suspensions of our Constitution. And I'm seeing you kind of get more and more confident, you and your colleagues, with the powers that you have as legislators, and understanding more and more about what powers we do have, how our system was set up for you. And that's really beautiful to watch, but keep going.
Thank you. This was my first term. So there was a bit of a learning curve the first year. Also, we had to move the Overton window, right? Last year was moving the Overton window a lot. Now we're in a more comfortable place and we could do more. Like, frankly, I had a huge learning curve with the House last year, and I didn't get that much through last year. And
well, last year was
I didn't have to deal that much with the Senate. Well, right. I didn't have to deal that much with the Senate. This year, I got everything I wanted through the House, and then I had to have the learning curve with the Senate. But we ended up doing really well. Okay, then we had a bunch of bills about the state vaccine registry. Every state has an immunization information system, IIS system. And these are scary. You need to look into I don't care where you live, you look into them. Almost every state, it is required that you be in, well, maybe not every state, but like 50-50, I'd say. You're required to be in this system. So, and it can be as much as you refusing a vaccine is recorded in the system.
Oh my gosh.
Okay.
How is that legal? What about HIPAA?
Well, HIPAA really doesn't apply to much of anything. You'd be shocked. It really doesn't do that much. And so our system, we were the last state in the country to get this system up and running functionally. When it was originally passed in legislation, it was supposed to be a voluntary program, okay? And then it goes through administrative rules, and the bureaucrats get their hands on it, and they interpreted voluntary to mean opt out. You have the choice to opt out. Now, my issue with this is that, are people given informed consent so that they know that they can opt out? The reality is they're not. Okay. Most people don't have a clue that they're being tracked down to, every vaccine, at least ours is every vaccination event. An event being defined as an administration or refusal of a vaccine. Yeah. So we just got ours up and running. And so we have HB 1606 making the state vaccine registry an opt-in program.
Wow.
You have to sign a form to make yourself put into the system.
That's amazing.
Yeah, the medical
Huge.
establishment hates it, but
Yes, and I
okay.
bet big tech hates it because that data is so valuable. That database is so valuable. Wow, that's huge. Again, a total model for every state in the country when it
There's
comes to
only
medical
one other
practice.
state with an opt-in program. It is Texas.
This is so important. It seems nerdy, but it's so important
No,
because,
a data collection is the end game,
yep.
everyone. It is
Oh,
really
you're
not like
absolutely
the
right.
vaccine itself is not the end game. It is the controlling you through all of your data is the end game. And so we have HB 1608. There was during the state of emergency when the vaccines first got rolled out. There was a 6-month period that there was an emergency order saying that if you got the COVID vaccine, you had to be entered into this system. You could not opt out. And so 1608 informs all of those people that they were put into the system without their consent and saying that they can opt out at this point, right?
Unbelievable. So good. So
Yes.
impressive. What else have you got?
What other ones do we have in here? I think that is it. Oh, we have one more vaccine registry bill, 1488, expanding the prohibition against discrimination against an individual's election not to participate in the vaccine registry. Essentially, because all sorts of, by the way, private institutions get your vaccine information from this registry. Schools, daycares, it's shared with everybody. Pharmacists, it's shared with different like researchers. We sell them to research groups all the time and all that kind of stuff, but daycare. So like, I guess, I think the sponsor's original fear was that because his children would not be in the registry, he didn't want the daycare to say, well, I don't want you here because we don't have this information on you or whatever. So this basically says that no one can discriminate for your choice to be in or out of the registry.
So important. You've
Yes.
liberated people from a form of exploitation and enslavement that they don't even understand.
Yes.
Yeah, it's so important. And it also protects people from the use that could be made of that data registry, right? I mean, they blurred right into the vaccine passports, social credit score, turn off your bank account as in Canada. This is a much more impactful step than just not being in a vaccine registry. It protects people.
It is wild how much the medical establishment and the bureaucrats fought the opt-in bill for a registry that just became active a year ago. And their only explanation was, well, we need this to prevent outbreaks. And my argument was, well, what happened all the years before last year? Like, did we have a problem? And but at the end of the day, now I'm going to tell you, this is the wildest testimony I have ever heard because it was the most honest, but he didn't realize that he was being so honest. There was a pediatrician who came to oppose the opt-in bill. And a representative asked him, you're saying that there won't be enough participation in the registry to get an accurate sense of the data, but people are supposed to be informed that they can opt out. So wouldn't it be the same participation if they're actually being informed that they can opt out? And he said, well, let me put it to you this way. If a parent comes in with their 1-year-old and I say to them, oh, there are these vaccines that they could have now. Do you want them to have them? He said, they think that they have the ability to say no. So I always just say, when they come in, I'll say, oh, these are the shots they're due for. I don't ask.
That's so horrible.
So my mind was blown that he was that honest.
Right.
But so in other words, they don't want people to have informed consent because when people do have informed consent and know that they have choices, they sometimes choose not to participate.
Totally. This is so cynical. As a parent, if a pediatrician said something like that to me, I would not know that I had the choice to opt out, that they're due for. That's so cut and dried. Oh my gosh. This is so huge. And I bet the medical entities resisted this bill because people cannot imagine how valuable that data is, and people have
They
to
have no idea.
there's
There's a much bigger end game to all of this
totally
data.
it's just the entry point for this valuable data. It's just harvesting the data, and you have really liberated the people of New Hampshire in protecting them from that kind of exploitation. So this is amazing. We've covered them all. I guess I have one final question for you. This is honestly, these days, not that much makes someone feel really happy and uplifted, but this is a pure trifecta, right? It's an 18-fecta. It's, it's just so much good stuff that you guys did for the people of New Hampshire. And I say that in a nonpartisan way. It's just straight up constitutional rights. Would you say that people showing up made a big difference in helping you all pass these bills? Did people call? Did they appear? Did they give testimony? What was the status of, ordinary people in helping you do this?
Yeah, so I've talked with people in other states, and I think what makes New Hampshire unique, the fact that we have been able to do a lot of things that other states haven't. We don't have a supermajority Republican, and we have very tight majorities. This has been partisan issues. It has been the grassroots efforts. And other states, people have a hard time getting themselves organized to get grassroots activism going. And my group is not the only one that pushed some of these bills, but Rebuild New Hampshire, these are our issues. We were formed as Reopen New Hampshire to reopen the state. And we have, built our army, and the people have gone out there and they've done it. They have shown up to the hearings. They have shown up to the sessions even. They have made the calls. It makes me a little feared in the legislature. Like, I hate to say it like that, but
you can unleash your
politicians are a little
army.
afraid of me because I can tell people what's going on, and I could get 1,000 emails dropped in a day, right? And that is what does move the needle, right? And that really doesn't. So I think it was Kansas that passed a really good bill. I can't remember what it was, but it was like a really good health freedom bill not that long ago. And I heard the representative interviewed who, championed it. And he was like, oh yeah, I mean, it was the most amount of emails that he'd ever received on a single bill. I think we got like 400 emails. And wow. I'm like, in New Hampshire, please, I could do thousands. I could do 1,000 in a day, please.
That is
because
awesome.
People are willing to do that. And it is, we've burned them out a little bit. Everybody in New Hampshire, I'm sorry. And I thank you for all of your efforts. I know we're all burned out. We're almost at the finish line. I have one more play on one more bill still. It is the only employer vaccine exemption bill, and the Senate did kill it, but the House wants that bill so badly that we have attached it onto a Senate priority bill in the House. And if they want that bill, they must negotiate for vaccine exemptions for employees. So
you're playing hardball.
SB 407, please tell your senators to vote for a committee of conference or to concur with SB 407. I'm going to need more. So I have one more that I'm going to need to use everyone for, but because it is the people making the calls and doing the emails, and they have to feel, unfortunately, what happened with that bill, the lobbyists kind of saw what we were all doing, right? And they knew that they could not focus their efforts on all of these bills. We put in the most amount of medical freedom bills of any state in the country. Wow. Okay. Right. They laser focused in on this one bill, and the senators felt the pressure. Politicians are like dogs. They can't be educated. Okay. They are like dogs. They can only respond to reward and punishment. Okay. And unfortunately, the senators felt more pressure from the lobbyists than from the people. And so we have to flip that. We have to flip it.
Got it. Well, this is so impressive. And I'm so in awe. I'm so happy to hear this. And I know everyone watching will be really happy to hear, whether or not you agree with these bills. What's beautiful is that the people's voices are being heard, and they're right there in the legislative process. So thank you so much. Another time, maybe you'll teach all the rest of us how you organize, right? Because that's the DNA, how you organize.
We should do that. We should absolutely do that. And that sounds awesome. But my quick plug is that I have decided I'm running for re-election.
Oh, good.
Just decided. So Melissa 4 Merrimack.com. I need donations. I have a big target on my back for this next election. So
and anyone can donate, right? They don't have
anyone can donate.
So where's the website that they donate? Melissa for, what was it?
Merrimack.com.
MERRIMAC.
MACK.
MACK.com. Okay, everyone, you heard her. And whether or not you live in New Hampshire, this is someone who's going to bat for her constituents. If you love what you heard, help her, support her. You know, you get the legislature that you work for, and that you put your money where your mouth is. And all the rest of you, this is fantastic food for thought. Dr. Representative Blesek, thank you so much. I hope you get a chance to go out and celebrate with your colleagues and your constituents. It's a really happy bulletin in the middle of what has been a tough couple of years. And I know we'll see wonderful
And if you live in New Hampshire, my final plug is that you should start calling Governor Sununu's office to tell him to support all these bills.
All right, you got that, everyone? Thank you so much, Representative Blesek. Fantastic to hear from you. Thank you so much.
Hey,
everyone, it's Naomi Wolf of Daily Clout, and I am asking you to please, if you like the video you just saw, support us, become a member, donate. You can send checks to P.O. Box 24, Millerton, New York, 12546, or go to Daily Clout, DAILYCLOUT, become a member or donate. Thank you so much for your support. Every penny goes for paying our hardworking staff, paying hosting costs, and paying our lawyers who have been leading the fight to keep you safe and free, to keep the Constitution safe and to keep you free. Thank you so much.